he's trying to bring some sanity to these conversations and focus on people who know of what they speak and have a proven track record on such topics. Like we talk to and use material that Andy McCarthy puts together from NRO, former federal prosecutor, because he brings law and reason and clarity to these hyperbolic allegations that are bandied about. Another individual who does that is Trey Gowdy, congressman from South Carolina and a former prosecutor himself, who spoke with Bill Hemmer on Fox News yesterday about the dueling allegations about the Russia hacked the election left narrative, as well as Trump's allegation about Obama wiretapping.
But what do you think about his comment about the amount of information, the quality of evidence, et cetera?
I think Congress is much better equipped to do investigations than journalists are. We can't rely on anonymous sources. We can't rely on leaked information, classified information, which in and of itself is a crime. So with all due respect to the reporters, I can't cross-examine anonymous sources. You can't even directly examine them. It's a lot easier to write a news piece than it is to conduct an investigation. What Congress needs is access to the witnesses, access to the documents, and to understand we don't run parallel criminal investigations. We have a job to do, but it is not to investigate crime.
Have you seen evidence that the Obama team did surveillance at Trump Tower?
No, sir.
Have you seen evidence that the Trump team colluded with the Russians during the election last year?
No, sir, and reports to the contrary have been described as demonstrably false to me by people who would know.
Well, the organization that does investigate crime, one of them is the FBI, and we're pleased to be joined by James Kallstrom, who's a former assistant director of the FBI, to talk more about this. James, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So what about Jim Comey's reported call over the weekend for the Department of Justice to publicly repudiate Trump's claim that there was surveillance of some sort going on at Trump Tower during the campaign?
Well, why that would be in the public domain is beyond me. This whole thing is farcical in my view. Here you've got the New York Times and others reporting so-called information from multiple people in the intelligence community, talking about wiretaps, talking about the content of transcripts in the case of General Flynn and others, and yet, the director of national intelligence was on television yesterday saying that there was, to his knowledge, and that he would be in a position to have knowledge, there were no FISA authorizations. And I believe that, quite frankly, because knowing how that works and how tough it is to provide the probable cause necessary, even to electronic surveillance on foreign adversaries, when you throw in the fact that American citizens are involved here, that is a huge problem in types of wiretaps like that, if they're actually existing. And they have to be minimized immediately. And there have to be reports written. And, everybody takes it extremely serious.
Well, what about... I'm sorry.
My view at this point is that everything that was in the New York Times is bogus.
Okay, that wouldn't be novel. But what about the reports, and not just limited to the New York Times, about the Obama Department of Justice seeking and obtaining a FISA order in October?
I just don't know if that's true. It could very well be. Would I be surprised if the Obama administration was involved in this whole situation? No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Did the president, use his executive power to have a wiretap without the Department of Justice involvement or the FBI? Boy, that would be really something. That would be a really news event in the future history books of the United States. But there's no question, in my view, there's a fifth column in the United States that includes, a lot of the operatives that were in the Obama administration, the DNC, the places like the New York Times and major print and broadcast media. And, they want to have a 360 circle around President Trump and not allow him to do anything. If you looked at some of the federal statutes on sedition, I mean, we have a lot of the elements of it right now. And it's really tragic, and it's just a pack of lies in most cases. And, did the FBI have some investigation on particular Russians? I mean, sure, possibly all the time. Were they listening in on the Trump organization and operatives? Quite frankly, I find that probably not plausible.
Well, think about the Obama Department of Justice. I mean, they targeted James Rosens of Fox News as a possible criminal co-conspirator. They seized phone records of AP reporters and the editors in 2013. And then the IRS under Barack Obama systematically targeted the president's political opponents. So knowing their past, to me, it seems feasible that they could have wiretapped Trump Tower. Or am I just...
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. But, is there, if it was done through the legal processes, which are between you and I, are very difficult, even in the Title III world, you got to have actual facts. You've got to have multiple page affidavits that allow the government to invade the privacy of these things. And, the Obama administration, pushed the Justice Department or pushed the FBI to write such affidavits. Boy, I don't know where they'd come up with that information that would convince a FISA judge, quite frankly, because I think the whole story is a straw man. This whole Russian thing is a bunch of BS. Was Paul Manafort involved somehow in the Ukraine? Probably. I mean, but was there some strategy, aided by the Russians to help Trump win the election? I think that's nonsense.
Yeah. So let me go back to something you referenced before. You talked about a fifth column action. So are you suggesting that there is the so-called deep state, elements within the deep state that are seeking purposely to undermine this president, and that's what a lot of these straw man stories, as you say, and leaks are about?
I think absolutely. And I think it's been planned, before Mr. Trump took office, and I think a lot of these operatives. I mean, if you just looked at the John Podesta emails, which I don't even think that came from Russia, quite frankly. I think that was somebody, a deep throat inside the DNC. But in any case, if you look at that and you look at the criminality, and you look at the just the nonchalant ability to pay people to disrupt and cause fights, and they basically, in my view, they have roving gangs of thugs that they pay, that have a very nasty effect. Now, could people be following people around in this day and age? I mean, you can wiretap without a court order. Of course, it's illegal. I mean, you can follow people and monitor their cell phones quite easily with a couple $100 on Radio Shack. I mean, you can do all kinds of things like that. So who knows? But I wouldn't put any of that past this band of liars and corrupt people that we're dealing with now.
Well, how did these bands that you're talking about? I mean, you're a former assistant director of the FBI. How did they take root in the intelligence community, and where is Jim Comey and the FBI to root them out if this is true?
Well, that's the question. I think from my view, and I'm not there now, so my observations basically are based on things that I read and people that I talk to. First off, this is not the run-a-day brick FBI agent or CIA agent or the Patriots at NSA. These, if they exist, and they apparently exist according to the New York Times, unless the New York Times is just at the point of absolutely fabricating total lies daily. I mean, they talk about over and over again these 5 or 6 people that are talking to them that have knowledge. Do they exist or are they phony? I don't know. But I know there's a lot of politicalization with the agency, with John Brenner, very political guy. Mm-hmm. Others there that I won't name. I can't imagine that the NSA would be doing stuff like that. Why did Obama, a week before he left office, modify an executive order to allow NSA to disseminate some of the most sensitive, highly classified information in the United States to 16 other agents? I mean, for one reason, in my view, and that's to have the people that are there, have the ability to leak information. And and have access to it.
Yeah, because the more people you tell, the greater chance you have of a leak. Do you think FBI Director Comey is doing the right thing? Should he come out and talk to the American people or just remain silent?
I don't understand. I mean, I know Jim Comey very well, and I've been critical of him in the past with the lack of process in the Hillary Clinton matter and the Clinton Foundation. But I think he's basically an honest guy, and I can't see him being part of that cabal. However, things the FBI does, always with a court order. I mean, I'd be flabbergasted if someone in the FBI was actually conducting something that wasn't authorized. So I feel very confident that anything like that takes place. Jim Comey then has somewhat of an obligation to report certain things to the Attorney General, to the National Security Council, and so if it actually did happen, if the Bureau was involved somehow, there's no question that some of that stuff would have been disseminated. But, it's so highly political, it's almost beyond belief that anything legally could take place like that.
He is James Kallstrom, former Assistant Director of the FBI. James, thanks very much for joining us and sharing your insights. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And he joined us.